I never imagined that an innocent pastime could have such dark roots. I grew up believing that video games were simple games, modern distractions for children and young people. But what I saw during my experience with hell broke my soul. In a terrifying vision, I was taken beyond the veil, and what I discovered left a lasting mark on me. Demons use video games as traps, as bait to seduce, enslave, and drag entire generations away. I saw it with my own eyes in the depths of the abyss, and today I have the responsibility to tell you about it. Don't mock or ignore it, because what I'm about to reveal to you could be happening in your own home right now. Before continuing, write in the comments, "Christ protects my children." Declare it with faith, because this war is real, and your word can be a sword against the darkness. When I was taken away in spirit, I saw a huge hall in hell lit by giant screens showing video games of all kinds. They were like endless arcades, but instead of human coins, what was being offered were souls. Thousands of children sat in front of consoles, their eyes glowing as if hypnotized. Their hands moved the controls tirelessly, but they weren't playing, they were slaves, endlessly repeating the same scenes. Every defeat was a cry, every victory a deception that kept them trapped. Small demons, like grotesque parodies of cartoon characters, mocked them, feeding on their frustration and joy. I saw how many games had hidden portals, not on the screen, but in the spiritual realm. Games of violence opened doors to anger and hatred. Games of witchcraft and fantasy were direct doors to the occult. Games of excess and greed sowed greed in even innocent hearts. Each game was a sowing, each level passed a stronger bond. The angel who accompanied me said in a deep voice, "What parents see as entertainment, the enemy uses as indoctrination. They think they're playing, but in reality they're being programmed." The scene changed, and I found myself in a corridor of hell where old consoles, cartridges, and discs were piled up, all burning like embers. I understood that each generation had been trapped by its technology. Before it was arcades, then home consoles, now cell phone games and virtual reality. The enemy doesn't change its plan, it only updates its tools, and each device was an altar, each screen a mirror where darkness projected its influence. The most painful thing was recognizing titles and characters that I myself had played once, without imagining what was hidden behind them. I also saw how demons disguised as avatars mingled within the games. They seemed like friendly characters, but secretly their movements were rituals. A cartoonish demon looked directly at me and said, "They think they control us with their buttons, but we control their hearts." And immediately I saw innocent children repeating phrases, gestures, and behaviors that the demonic avatars taught them. It was a silent indoctrination disguised as fun. The most shocking thing happened when I saw an area where the souls of children who had died were trapped in eternal cycles. Some were replaying shooting games, falling over and over again under spiritual bullets that burned like fire. Others were running in endless labyrinths, pursued by grotesque creatures that laughed at their suffering. They couldn't stop, couldn't turn off the console because they were already part of hell's eternal game. The angel wept and told me, "The enemy not only trapped you on earth, he also enslaves you for eternity." That's why the warning must be clear. It's not just a game. As I continued to contemplate that vision, I saw how the demons had entire departments dedicated to different types of games. It was like a trap factory where each design had a specific purpose, to destroy the children from within. In one section, I saw shooting and war games. The demons who controlled them were dark, armed with glowing spears, and they fed on the violence the children absorbed. On Earth, it seemed like simple fun, but spiritually, each bullet fired left marks of hatred, anger, and bloodlust in the player's heart. The angel whispered to me, "These games turn death into entertainment, and when death is entertainment, the fear of God disappears." In another room, I saw witchcraft and fantasy games, where spells and incantations were part of the mechanics. Demons disguised as wizards and mythological creatures laughed out loud because every time a child cast a spell in the game, they were uttering words in their spirit that opened doors to darkness. Parents would say, "It's just their imagination," but what they didn't know was that those words, even if they were virtual, were translated as pacts in the invisible world. I saw burning scrolls where those invocations were recorded, and each one was used as evidence in hell to claim their souls. I also saw a section of games of simulation and greed. There, children built empires, accumulated wealth, and bought and sold endlessly. Spiritually, those games were traps that sowed greed, unbridled ambition, and the love of money. Demons who looked like dark bankers whispered to them, "You will be great, you will have everything, you will own the world," and the children grew up with a constant emptiness, always seeking more, never satisfied. The angel told me, this is how they prepare hearts to love the world and forget eternity. The most disturbing thing was seeing the section of games full of perversion and sexualization, provocative words, dirty dialogue, and scenes full of lust were used as bait. Demons with grotesque bodies, half cartoon and half human, dragged the little ones in with obscene laughter. I saw how even children who had never heard those words at home were taught perversity through an online game. In the spirit, each click was like a burning altar. I saw rivers of fire connecting those consoles directly to abysses of filth and thousands of teenage souls trapped there, unable to escape. The angel then showed me the strategy of addiction. I saw how the demons manipulated the game so they would never end, infinite levels, rewards that kept the children connected for hours and hours in front of the screen. Physically, it was the desire to play more, but spiritually, they were chains that tightened with every additional minute. Some children didn't eat, didn't sleep, didn't speak to their families, because the enemy had already isolated them in a virtual world. In hell, those souls sat in front of eternal consoles, repeating the same frustration over and over again, without rest, without pause, without hope. I also saw how online video games were used as social networks. Demonic children spoke with strangers who, in the spiritual realm, were demons disguised as friends. These conversations seemed harmless, but in the occult, they sowed rebellion against parents, contempt for authority, and opened the door to greater deception. I saw a child listen to advice from a gamer who told him, "Don't obey, do what you want, your parents don't understand anything." In the spiritual realm, that voice was a demon sowing seeds of disobedience that would grow like thorns in his heart. The saddest thing was when I saw entire homes collapse because of these games. Parents tried to talk to their children, but they were trapped in the screen, unable to let go of the controller. Spiritually, every attempt at communication was blocked by demons who intervened, filling the environment with shouting, anger, and distance. The angel told me, this is the enemy's plan, to isolate the children, to break up the family, because he knows that a divided family expresses itself easily. And I saw how many tired parents simply gave up, handing over the upbringing of their children to the console, without realizing that they were handing them over to hell itself. The angel, with a broken voice, told me, not all video games are bad, but the enemy has infiltrated them so that even the good ones are used as bait. If parents don't watch, if they don't pray, if they don't teach the word, their children will fall like sheep to the slaughter. And then I saw a heartbreaking scene, a little boy playing joyfully, with no apparent malice, but behind him was a dark shadow that slowly enveloped him. That shadow didn't scream, didn't scare him, it only lulled him with lights and sounds. It was the spirit of addiction, and once it caught him, it dragged him into the abyss. The vision became even more terrifying, when the angel took me to a deeper part of hell. There were no modern consoles or luminous screens, but entire prisons designed in the form of eternal video games. Each cell was a level, each torment an endless game. I saw thousands of children and teenagers who in life had been trapped by those games, now condemned to play them for eternity, but without fun, without rest, without hope. What was once entertainment in the abyss had become torture. I saw a group of souls running in a shooting game. They were chased by giant shadows that never tired. Every time they fell under the fiery bullets, their pain was unbearable, but they would instantly get up only to repeat the same sentence. They couldn't get out, they couldn't turn off the system because they themselves had become part of the game, and the demons mocked, "You wanted to play all night, now you'll play forever." That phrase reverberated like an echo in every corner. In another section, I saw games of magic and fantasy, but there the spells were real chains. The children were forced to repeat incantations over and over again, and every word that came from their lips lit a fire in their throats. They were enslaved to the witchcraft they had once played for fun. Demons in black robes laughed, saying, "They opened the door, we just walked in." It was like an eternal ritual where innocents were used as unwitting priests of hell. I also saw a place where games of greed had transformed into torments of eternal covetousness. Souls found themselves in a dark market, chasing coins that burned in their hands. Every time they tried to buy something, the object turned to ash. They ran around in despair, accumulating riches they could never enjoy. The angel told me, such is the fate of those who love money. They always seek more, but they never find peace. Spiritually, those children had learned from a young age to covet, and now that covetousness was their eternal prison, it was heartbreaking to contemplate the lust area. Children and adolescents who had fallen into games tainted with perversion were now chained to scenes that were endlessly repeated. Their eyes burned like hot coals, forced to stare at images of corruption they couldn't tear away. Each glance was a whip that tore at their souls. Demons in grotesque forms lashed them, saying, "You asked for it, you played it, now this is yours forever." Lust, which had once seemed like innocent fun, became an unbearable torment that never ended. The angel showed me another room. There, the addiction games were recreated as eternal labyrinths. Children ran tirelessly, looking for exits that never appeared. Each corridor seemed identical to the last, each door a deception. They screamed for help, but their voices bounced off walls that laughed at their pain. The demons followed close behind, whispering, "One more level, one more try. You'll never stop." I realized that addiction doesn't end with death, but rather in hell it multiplies in the form of eternal slavery. What broke my heart was seeing some of those children calling out the name of Jesus, but it was too late. Their voices were muffled by demonic laughter. The angel wept with me and said, "They had a chance in life. They listened to the warnings, but they were dismissed as hype. Now what was once a game has become their condemnation." I felt indescribable pain because I understood that many parents today are still letting their children play with fire without realizing it. I then saw a gigantic demon who looked like a programmer from hell. His fingers were like burning keys, and with each touch, he created new levels of torment. Behind him were screens where even darker games were being designed, prepared for future generations. The angel told me, "The enemy never stops. He perfects his traps, makes them more attractive, and disguises them better. What you saw so far is not the end, it's just the beginning." The last thing I saw on that block was a crowd of demons celebrating in front of those video game prisons. They shouted like fans in a stadium, raising chains as if they were trophies, and I understood that just as heaven celebrates every soul that is saved, hell celebrates every child who falls into its trap. They weren't just simple players. They were eternal trophies of the enemy. When I thought I could no longer bear the pain of what I was seeing, a voice from heaven told me, "Look also at what happens on earth, because what is sown already flourishes here below." And suddenly the vision changed. I saw homes full of consoles, giant screens, and children with headphones on, disconnected from everything around them. Their parents, preoccupied with their own problems, believed it was harmless, that games were just a distraction. Didn't they know that in the spiritual world, every game was connecting their children to invisible cords that dragged them toward the abyss? The angel showed me how some games were directly inspired by hellish designs, characters that promoted witchcraft, unlimited violence, rebellion against authority. I saw demons blowing ideas to the creators, inspiring plots and levels that seemed like simple fantasy stories, but were actually open doors to spirits of control and perdition. They think they're inventing, but they only reproduce what we show them. A mocking demon who appeared in the vision told me, and the angel protected me with his light. I also saw thousands of young people trapped in virtual rooms communicating with strangers who were not human, but entities in disguise. Dark spirits posed as playmates, sowing hatred, suicidal thoughts, and mockery of God. Many of these children received their first temptation through a simple online game. The enemy had perfected his trap. He no longer needed dark rituals in caves. Now all it took was a click and an internet connection. The most terrifying thing was when the angel took me to a spiritual stadium where the demons displayed their victims as trophies. Each lost child was shown as an achievement, a victory over heaven. I saw hellish banners that read, "Another trapped by addiction, another seduced by violence, another sold to lust." The demons screamed and celebrated as if it were a championship game. It was a cruel spectacle that tore me apart, because I realized that many young souls were used as entertainment for the hosts of hell. But in the midst of that darkness, a sudden light pierced the place. The angel raised his sword and showed me something different, a group of children on their knees praying in their rooms. Some did it in secret because their parents didn't believe, but those small prayers were like flames that destroyed invisible chains. I saw demons trying to approach, but upon hearing the name of Jesus, they retreated in terror. Heaven told me, as long as there is one child who calls on my name, there is still hope. I was shown parents who had decided to fast and pray for their children. In the physical world, they seemed like ordinary families, but spiritually, they were warriors who raised walls of fire around their homes. Video games tried to enter, but they couldn't penetrate those barriers of prayer. The angel spoke to me in a firm voice. Parents don't understand that their authority is spiritual. If they surrender, the enemy wins, but if they fight, hell retreats. Then I heard a deep roar that shook all of hell. It was Satan himself, screaming in fury because some children were being rescued. I saw him banging on the walls of the abyss with flaming chains and saying, "Don't let go, they're mine." They grew up with my images, they repeated my phrases, they played my games, but at the same time, I saw angels descending like lightning, snatching some of those children from the demonic clutches. It was a constant war, minute by minute for every young soul on earth. The angel then showed me a golden book in the sky. In it were the names of the children who had been set apart to serve God, but I saw some names flash and then go out. I asked, why? And the angel answered, because their parents weren't vigilant, because they let their hearts be stolen by the screen. But all is not lost yet. There is still time, there is still redemption. I felt those words were an urgent warning to parents today, not to let their guard down, not to surrender their homes to the enemy disguised as entertainment. The vision returned to hell one last time on that block. I saw children running desperately, looking for a way out of the playground equipment. Some stretched their hands toward heaven, but instead of finding help, they were dragged by chains that bound them to the burning ground. Their voices called out, "Dad, Mom, where are you?" And I realized that the responsibility was not only theirs, but also that of previous generations who failed to protect them. Hell not only punishes individual sins, it also collects debts of negligence and silence. The angel looked at me intently and said, "Speak, do not be silent." Many parents think we exaggerate when we talk about video games and modern music, but today you see the spiritual reality. The enemy uses what seems innocent to build eternal prisons. If you don't speak out, their blood will be on you, but if you warn, even if they mock you, even if they reject you, you will be doing your duty. And that voice was like a fire inside me, a divine order that I understood I must obey until my last breath. The angel took me even deeper, to a place where the prisons were much more elaborate. There I saw direct representations of games that children on Earth love obsessively. It was as if hell had taken every detail and turned it into an instrument of torture. I saw a battlefield reminiscent of those war games and shooting games that seem so realistic. Only in hell there was no reset or escape button. The young people fell again and again under fiery bullets that pierced their spiritual flesh. They got up immediately, not because they wanted to, but because they were condemned to repeat the scene forever. The pain was unbearable, but it never ended. Each fall was accompanied by demonic laughter that shouted, "You wanted action, now you'll have eternal war." Up ahead, I saw an arena that looked like a sports game, but there were no fair rules. The players were chained souls, forced to run after a burning ball that burned their feet and hands. Each goal wasn't a cause for celebration, but for pain. The demons played too, and every time they won, They tore off pieces of souls and threw them into the fire as trophies. I understood that even seemingly harmless games could be used as tools of distraction and spiritual bondage. In another space, I saw scenarios of magic and fantasy. It was like a dark castle where children were forced to cast spells with words that burned on their tongues. Their voices were scorched with each incantation, and each spell uttered strengthened the chains of their own executioners. I shuddered because I realized that many games that seem innocent today actually teach children to utter curse words without being noticed. I saw demons dressed as magicians inciting them, "Keep playing, repeat the phrases, so you belong to us forever." I also witnessed a scene where construction games appeared. Children tried to build cities, but each block they placed turned into burning stone that buried them deeper and deeper. They worked tirelessly, building their own prisons, while demons laughed from on high, saying that it was your choice to build without God. Now your walls are your eternal tomb. What seemed like creativity on earth became slavery in hell, because it was not in service to the Creator, but to the enemy. I saw an even more horrifying area, where lust was the protagonist. There, scenes from games contaminated with perverse imagery were played out, and souls were forced to watch without being able to close their eyes. Their cries of despair were muffled by demons repeating mocking phrases. "You asked for it, you played it. Now it's your turn to suffer it." The bodies of those souls burned like human torches, and the shame was as painful as fire. The angel wept with me and said, "The enemy knows that lust is one of his most effective weapons against youth. That's why he disguises it as entertainment to make it seem harmless. But what you see here is its true fruit." In the midst of those scenes, a gigantic demon appeared before me. His skin seemed made of incandescent circuitry, and his eyes were two screens showing scenes of children playing in the dirt. Each child represented was an open file, a game in progress. The demon said in a mocking voice, "They think they're playing freely, but every click, every word, every connection binds them to me. I am the true programmer. They don't need to sign a blood pact. All they need to do is surrender their time, their mind, their innocence." His words chilled me to the bone because I understood that what he was saying was a spiritual strategy in motion today. The angel raised his sword and with a flash forced the demon back, but before disappearing, the monster shouted, "We see each other in every game room. We see each other on every console. We see each other in every child who no longer prays because they prefer my screens. They are mine." That roar echoed like an earthquake, and I realized that the enemy does not hide his plans because he knows that most people do not believe these warnings. The angel then showed me a near future. I saw children completely disconnected from reality, living only in virtual worlds. I saw parents who no longer knew how to communicate with their children because they were trapped in headphones and screens, unaware of the voice from their own homes. And most terrible of all, I saw demons assigned to each game as spiritual guardians, collecting the souls of those who die trapped in unrepentant addictions. The angel whispered to me in pain, "Hell has no need of stone temples. Its temple is now screens, and millions kneel before them without realizing it." The angel led me to an even darker abyss, and though the atmosphere changed, a heavy silence covered everything, interrupted only by the wails of thousands of children trapped in their gaming prisons. Suddenly, a roar shook the depths, and the chains hanging on the walls clanged like burning iron bells. The air grew thicker, almost impossible to breathe, and I realized that someone far more powerful was about to manifest. Shadows began to spiral together, forming a black throne raised on columns of liquid fire. From that throne emerged the figure everyone feared, Satan himself, the adversary, the father of lies. His presence was so oppressive that my knees trembled, and even though the angel held me, I felt my soul was about to disintegrate under his gaze. His eyes glowed like burning coals, and his voice boomed like thunder. "Did you think the video games were yours? No. They are mine because I inspired them, I perfected them, I sowed them in every generation." With a wave of his claw, Satan made giant screens appear around his throne. Projected on them were scenes of the earth, children in their rooms, teenagers playing online games, entire families entertained in front of screens, while the word of God remained locked in a corner. Look, he said mockingly, thousands spend hours here, and not 1 minute with me is enough to mark their souls. Every game is an altar, every connection is a prayer to my kingdom, even if they don't know it, and when they die, they no longer belong to me halfway, they belong to me completely. The most horrifying thing was when Satan held up a book made of fire. It wasn't the book of life, it was a crude imitation. In it were written the names of children and young people accompanied by symbols of the games they had played the most. Each symbol was like a chain sealed with their name. He pointed with a crooked finger and exclaimed, "These are my champions, those who never knew prayer, but knew every shortcut, every trick, every false victory. They served me better than many preachers." Their laughter shook the entire abyss, and each echo was a dart that tore at my spirit. I saw demons disguised as popular characters crawling at their feet. Video games, their grotesque forms were recognizable. Heroes transformed into executioners, villains turned into eternal jailers. They presented Satan with the souls they had managed to capture, and he crowned them with crowns of fire that brought not glory, but shame. "These are my digital kings," he shouted in a mocking voice, "kings without a throne, champions without a heavenly crown, warriors of a kingdom that never existed." The angel who was with me raised his voice and said, "He lies as he has always lied. No earthly victory is eternal, and the blood of the Lamb can break those chains if there is still life." But Satan interrupted him with a roar that shook the bowels of hell. "But in the meantime, they are mine. And every day I reap more and more because the parents sleep, because the churches are silent, because the preachers prefer to entertain rather than warn." That phrase pierced my soul because it was the pure truth. The negligence of men was fueling the feasts of hell. I saw Satan point to the earth and say, "They call me hype, they call me myth, they call me mere distraction, but I keep stealing their children, their homes, their generations, and no one does anything. I entertain them until they forget God, and when they want to seek Him, it's too late." His laughter echoed like a chorus of 1,000 thunderstorms. It was a direct mockery, a challenge against heaven, and I understood that this war wasn't symbolic, it was real and daily. The angel, with tears in his eyes, said to me, "Now you see why it's urgent to speak. The enemy doesn't rest, he never stops plotting. Every new console, every seemingly innocent game can become a trap. If families don't rise up in prayer, hell will continue to ravage without resistance." At that moment, I felt a holy fire igniting within me, an urgency to warn the world. It wasn't about prohibiting for the sake of prohibiting, but rather about opening spiritual eyes to a reality that few want to see. Before disappearing, Satan raised his fiery throne and shouted, "The next championship is mine, the next generation is mine, and it will only get easier, because while heaven speaks of eternity, I offer them the immediate, the fast, the exciting, and they prefer me." That statement was seared into my mind like a hot iron. I understood that he not only steals souls, he also steals time, steals attention, steals the innocence of millions who could be searching for God. While Satan's words were still ringing like hammers in my mind, a flash of light pierced the depths. The light didn't come from torches or blazing fires, it was a pure, unwavering clarity that no shadow could extinguish. Satan retreated furiously, growling like a wounded animal. The angel took me by the arm and said, "Now you will see that heaven is not silent, that even in the midst of deception, there is a divine answer." Then I saw an army of angels descending like flashes of lightning. Each one carried swords that seemed to be made of liquid light. They began to cut the invisible chains that bound some children trapped in the infernal games. Each blow released a soul that ascended like a spark upward. Satan roared, "They are not yours, they are mine." But the voice from heaven sounded like a trumpet, saying, "The blood of the Lamb still has power, and as long as there is someone who prays, I will listen." It was then that I saw scenes on earth. I saw mothers kneeling by their children's beds weeping and crying out, "Lord, break my child's chains, save him, free him from the screens, restore his innocence." Each tear fell like fire upon the chains in the spirit world, weakening them until they broke. There were parents who laid hands on the consoles and commanded in the name of Jesus that every unclean spirit be cast out of their homes, and in hell, demons came out, screaming in fury because they had lost ground. The angel showed me a detail. It was shocking. Not many parents prayed, but the few who did were causing spiritual earthquakes that shattered entire fortresses. The voice from heaven told me, I don't need distracted crowds, I need a few faithful people who dare to believe. With them, I will open paths where there seem to be none and rescue those who can still be reached. In another vision, I saw young people who had been addicted to gambling for years, but suddenly had dreams where the figure of Jesus appeared, calling them by name. Some woke up crying, feeling such a heavy weight that they ran to find a Bible, even though they had never opened one before. It was as if heaven itself infiltrated their nights to sow seeds of redemption. The angel said, The Lord continues to speak in visions and dreams, especially to this generation that doesn't listen to sermons, but can still hear in the intimacy of the early morning. I also saw churches that had understood the danger. Pastors stood up not with empty messages of condemnation, but with spiritual authority. They preached about modern idolatry, about the hidden risks in digital culture, and while some sneered and left, others broke their chains at the altar. I saw young people leaving their games in front of the pulpit, weeping and committing their lives to Christ. The angels celebrated because each renunciation was a victory over hell, but I also saw the other side, silent churches, leaders who preferred to please the crowd rather than confront sin. Some said, it's just games, let's not overreact, while in the spiritual world their congregations were being dragged into the abyss. The angel looked at me sadly and said, silence will also be judged. Failing to warn when the danger is clear is complicity with the enemy. That phrase was like fire in my bones, because I understood that omission is one of the favorite weapons of silencing what should be shouted from the pulpits. Then I saw heaven open like a curtain. A voice resounded with majesty, saying, I'm the Alpha and the Omega. Satan boasts of generations, but he does not have the last word. I will still raise up prophets among children. I will still put my spirit in adolescents whom the enemy believed to be his, and they will be trumpets that will announce my glory. In that moment, I saw small groups of young people gathered in parks and homes, without expensive instruments or lights, only with Bibles in their hands. They preached with a fire that set hearts ablaze, and each word was like an arrow of light that pierced the darkness. The angel showed me that some of these young people had been obsessive gamers, even on the verge of losing their lives to digital addictions. But Christ had rescued them and now they were using their story as a testimony to warn others. I saw a young man saying, I was a slave to screens, but Jesus set me free. What he used to destroy me, I now use to glorify the Lord. That statement shook the bowels of hell, because it was living proof that God's power is always greater. Satan from his throne screamed furiously as he saw those scenes. He hurled fire, he threw chains, but none reached those who were covered by prayer and the blood of the Lamb. His roar was one of defeat disguised as rage, because he knew that for every soul lost, another could be rescued, and I understood that the war was constant, that nothing was yet decided, because as long as there is breath, there is opportunity for redemption. The angel told me in a deep voice, you have not yet seen the worst, because the enemy is not content with trapping children in games. He is preparing something much bigger, a plan to enslave entire generations through a single system. Suddenly, the vision changed, and I saw myself in a gigantic room made of iron and fire, as if it were the command center of hell. There I saw demons working like dark engineers in front of incandescent screens. Each one seemed to program codes that were sent directly to Earth in the form of new technologies. I saw how T.